The room erupted in laughter just as the gavel came down. "Sold!" the auctioneer declared, grinning too widely. "And what a delightful finale this has been." Eliza Rowen stood frozen beneath the chandelier's glare, her fingers clenched tightly at her sides, nails pressing into her palms. The light above her felt too bright, too sharp, like it had been designed to expose her. "A person?" someone murmured. "Imagine that. Victor's idea, of course. How amusing." Her stepfather stood near the front, smiling as though he had just gifted the room something clever, something harmless. Eliza didn't move. She had learned long ago that movement invited attention, and attention invited judgment. "Shall we start the bidding?" the auctioneer had said moments earlier, his tone dripping with mock ceremony. A dinner companion, perhaps. A conversational curiosity? More laughter followed, softer now, more deliberate. £10? Someone called lazily. 15. 20 for the novelty. 30, another voice added, amused. If she speaks. A ripple of laughter spread again. Eliza felt it then, not just humiliation, but something colder. The realization that she was not even being insulted directly. She was being used, displayed, reduced to something that could be measured, priced, dismissed. 40, someone else added, though I suspect she's quiet. 50, another voice said, mock generosity creeping in. For silence alone. The numbers floated around her, detached from meaning, like distant echoes she couldn't quite grasp. Her ears rang slightly. Her breath felt shallow. She told herself not to react, not to look up, not to give them anything more to take. Victor didn't even look at her. He was watching the room, calculating, waiting. 60? The auctioneer prompted, glancing around with theatrical enthusiasm. Surely someone sees the value here? Value. The word landed harder than anything else. Eliza's fingers tightened further. She could feel her pulse in her throat now. And then, 500. The voice cut clean through everything. Not loud, not forceful, just certain. The laughter stopped, not gradually, instantly. Heads turned. Conversations died mid-breath. The auctioneer blinked. I beg your pardon, sir? £500, the voice repeated. This time everyone saw him. Lord Blackthorne stood at the back of the room, one hand resting lightly on his cane, his posture relaxed but deliberate. He hadn't attended a public gathering in over 2 years, and yet there he was, as though he had always belonged in that exact place, watching, waiting. Eliza's breath caught, not because of the amount, but because of the shift. The room had changed. 500, the auctioneer echoed, suddenly uncertain. Do I hear any advance? No one spoke. No one even moved. The earlier bidders, men who had laughed moments ago, now avoided looking in Adrian's direction entirely. Surely, the auctioneer tried again, forcing a thin smile. We can... No one answered, because this was no longer a joke. Going once, a pause stretched longer than it should have. Eliza felt it, every second of it. Going twice. Victor's smile had vanished. His expression had gone tight, controlled, but something beneath it had shifted. Sold. The gavel struck. And just like that, the laughter died completely. And Eliza didn't realize she had been holding her breath until it escaped her in a quiet, unsteady exhale. No one laughed now. They watched, and for the first time in her life, Eliza didn't feel invisible. She felt exposed in a different way, seen. If that moment caught your attention, take a second to like the video. It helps more than you think. And if you've ever felt underestimated or overlooked, drop a comment. I read them. Because Eliza's story, it's just getting started. The carriage ride home was quieter than usual. Not calm, just heavy. Victor sat across from her, his posture rigid, his fingers tapping once against the armrest before going still again. His eyes didn't settle in one place for long. Well, he said finally, that was unexpected. Eliza kept her gaze lowered. Because yes, £500, he repeated, slower this time. For you. There was no pride in it, no approval, just calculation. Eliza said nothing. Victor leaned forward slightly. You will explain this. I don't know anything, she replied. Victor studied her face, searching, measuring. You expect me to believe that? Yes. The answer came steady, too steady to challenge easily. Victor leaned back again, his jaw tightening. Men like Blackthorne do not act without reason. They do not waste money, especially not on... He paused, his eyes flicking over her briefly. Trivialities. The words settled between them. Eliza didn't react. Victor continued, quieter now. He hasn't been seen in years, and suddenly he appears to bid on you. Eliza's fingers tightened slightly against her dress. Wait, what did you say to him? Victor pressed. Nothing. What did you do? Nothing. Victor's gaze sharpened. Then why you? The question lingered longer than the others. Eliza didn't answer, because she didn't have one. Victor watched her for a long moment, then exhaled slowly. No, he murmured. There's something here. He turned his gaze toward the carriage window, his reflection faint against the glass. If this can be used, he said, almost to himself, it will be. Eliza felt that. Not as a threat, as a certainty. The carriage rolled on. The next evening, the knock came just before dusk. Eliza sat in the small sitting room, a notebook open on her lap, lines of careful sketches filling the pages, arches, load paths, pressure points mapped in neat, deliberate strokes. For a moment, once she allowed herself to disappear into it, into something that made sense, something that followed rules. Then the door opened. There is a gentleman to see you, miss. Eliza looked up. Who? The maid hesitated. Lord Blackthorne. Everything stilled. The air, the room, her thoughts. Victor appeared almost immediately, as if the name alone had summoned him. Show him in, he said quickly, too quickly. Eliza stood, closing the notebook halfway, her pulse beginning to rise, not with excitement, but with something sharper. Uncertainty. Why was he here? The answer stepped into the room moments later. Adrian Blackthorne moved with quiet control, his presence filling the space without effort. His gaze shifted once briefly to Victor, then settled on Eliza. Not dismissive, not curious, focused, as though she were the only thing in the room worth noticing. Miss Rowen, he said. His voice was calm, measured. Victor stepped forward immediately. My lord, what an honor. I would like to speak with Miss Rowen alone. Polite, final. Victor hesitated, just for a second. Then he forced a smile. Of course. He left. The door closed. Silence remained. Eliza clasped her hands together lightly. You wish to see me, my lord? Adrian studied her, not casually, not critically, precisely. I heard you speak once, he said. Eliza blinked. I'm sorry? At a lecture, he continued. 3 years ago. Structural design, Gothic vaulting. Her breath caught slightly. You asked why the load calculations ignored lateral stress under uneven foundation pressure. Eliza stared at him. No one had remembered that. No one had even responded. It was just a question. No, Adrian said quietly. It wasn't. He stepped closer, not intruding, but intentional. It was the only intelligent observation made that evening. Eliza didn't respond immediately, because for the first time, someone wasn't overlooking her. They were recalling her. Exactly. I have an exceptional memory, Adrian added, for things that matter. The words settled differently than anything else she had heard that week. Why did you bid? She asked before she could stop herself. The question hung there. Adrian didn't answer immediately. Instead, his gaze shifted to the notebook on the table. You may show me, he said. Eliza stiffened slightly. It's nothing. Miss Rowen. No force, but no room to refuse. Slowly she handed it to him. Adrian opened it, turned a page, then another. His eyes moved steadily, absorbing, analyzing. The silence stretched. Then, this is not nothing. Eliza looked down. I only study when I can. You redesign structures that were already considered complete, he said, and you improve them. Eliza swallowed. It keeps my mind occupied. Adrian closed the notebook gently, then looked at her again. It should be doing far more than that. The words lingered, and something inside her shifted, quietly but unmistakably. Not around her, within her. She didn't know it yet, but everything had already begun to change. Adrian did not return the notebook immediately. He held it for a moment longer, as if weighing something far beyond the paper in his hands. "May I keep this?" he asked. Eliza blinked. "Why?" "So I can understand how you think." The honesty in the answer unsettled her. People did not ask to understand her. They barely noticed her. "It's unfinished," she said quietly. "Good," Adrian replied. "So are most worthwhile things." He closed it and set it aside with care, as though it held value no one else had ever recognized. "I will return it," he added. Eliza nodded, though she wasn't sure why that mattered to her. Adrian turned toward the door, then paused. "Miss Rowen, do not allow them to convince you that your mind is insignificant." He left before she could respond. The room felt different after he was gone. Larger, quieter, and strangely, less suffocating. Victor entered almost immediately. "Well?" Eliza straightened. "He asked about my studies." Victor frowned. "Your what?" "My notes, my sketches." Victor's eyes narrowed. "And?" He seemed interested. That answer did not satisfy him. "Interested how?" "I don't know," Eliza said, and for once it wasn't entirely true. Victor paced once across the room, his jaw tight. "Men like Blackthorne do not visit for curiosity. There is always a purpose." Eliza said nothing. Victor stopped and looked at her sharply. "If this leads to advantage, you will not interfere." Eliza met his gaze, calm but distant. "I wouldn't know how." Victor studied her for a long moment, then gave a short nod and left. But Eliza remained standing there, her thoughts no longer quiet. The visits continued. At first they were brief, on a question, a discussion, a correction. Adrian would arrive without announcement, always at the same hour, always composed, and each time he spoke to her as though the rest of the world simply did not exist. "Why did you alter this support?" he asked one afternoon, pointing to a sketch he had returned. Eliza leaned closer. "The original design assumes uniform load distribution. But if weight shifts, it fails," Adrian finished. "Yes," she said, "unless reinforced here." He studied her in silence, then nodded once. "You account for failure before it occurs." Eliza hesitated. "Isn't that what design is?" A faint smile touched his expression. "It is what good design is." The conversations grew longer. Tea went cold as they debated. Papers spread across tables. Ink smudged her fingers as she explained ideas she had never spoken aloud before. And slowly, something began to change. Not in him, in her. Eliza started speaking without waiting to be asked. She disagreed. She corrected him once and braced for dismissal. Instead, Adrian simply said, "Show me," and she did. One evening he brought something different, a rolled set of age plans tied with a thin ribbon. "My estate," he said, placing them carefully on the table. "There is a bridge that has been problematic." Eliza's fingers hovered over the parchment. "May I?" He nodded. She unrolled it slowly. Her eyes moved across the design, measuring, calculating, seeing beyond what was drawn. "This won't hold," she said quietly. Adrian watched her closely. "Explain." "The arch is too shallow," she said, tracing the line with her finger. "Whereas it looks stable, but the stress will push outward over time. It will crack here and here." She tapped two precise points. Adrian didn't interrupt. "It needs to be steeper," she continued, "and the weight redistributed along the base. Otherwise, it's not a matter of if, but when." Silence followed. Then Adrian asked, "Can you fix it?" Eliza looked up at him. No one had ever asked her that before. Not can you point out the flaw, but can you build something better? "I think so," she said. Adrian nodded once. "Then do it." Days passed. Eliza worked in every spare moment. Her sketches became more precise, more confident. She stopped hiding them, and when Adrian returned, she showed him everything. "This changes the load path," she explained, her voice steadier than it had ever been. It won't just stand. It will last. Adrian studied the design for a long time. Then he said quietly, "You've improved it beyond its original conception." Eliza felt something tighten in her chest. Not fear, something warmer. "You make it sound important," she said. "It is important," Adrian replied. "You are building something that will outlive you." The words lingered. Eliza had never thought of her work that way. She had always assumed it would remain in notebooks, hidden, forgotten. But now it felt possible. And that was when everything began to fracture. The letter arrived in the morning, sealed, formal, final. Eliza read it once, then again. Her hands went cold. Victor found her moments later. "Well?" Eliza didn't look up. "You've arranged it." "Of course I have." She lifted her gaze slowly. "And without asking me." Victor's expression hardened. "You are not in a position to refuse." "Eliza, I am to marry Sir Reginald Crowe," she said, her voice unnaturally calm. "A man twice my age. A man I have never spoken to." "A respectable man," Victor snapped. "A wealthy man." "A convenient man," she replied. Victor stepped closer. "You will do as you are told." Eliza's grip tightened on the letter. "Why?" The words slipped out before she could stop it. Victor's eyes darkened. "Because," he said slowly, "your mother spent 2 years in debtor's prison." The air left Eliza's lungs. Victor continued, his voice quieter now, more dangerous. "And if that information were to become public, your future would vanish entirely." Eliza stared at him. "You wouldn't," she whispered. Victor held her gaze. "Try me." Silence fell, heavy, suffocating. Then he added almost casually, "Sir Reginald has offered a generous settlement. For all of us." Eliza felt something inside her begin to crack. Not loudly, not visibly, but deeply. "You're selling me," she said. Victor didn't flinch. "I am securing our future." Eliza looked down at the letter again. The ink blurred slightly, but she did not cry. She folded it carefully. "Of course," she said quietly. Victor nodded, satisfied. And just like that, her world narrowed again. But this time, something inside her refused to disappear with it. Eliza waited until nightfall. Not because she needed time to think, she already knew what she had to do, but because leaving in daylight would invite questions. Questions meant interference, and interference meant failure. She wrapped a dark shawl around her shoulders and stepped quietly through the corridor. The house was still. Victor had retired early, satisfied with his arrangement, certain of his control. That certainty made what she was about to do even more dangerous. By the time the carriage stopped before Adrian Blackthorne's residence, her pulse had steadied. Not calm, but focused. The doors opened. A servant stepped forward. "Miss Rowen." "Yes." "You are expected." That alone nearly stopped her. Expected. She hadn't sent word, hadn't asked permission, and yet, she stepped inside. Adrian was already in the study. Well, he didn't rise when she entered, but his attention shifted immediately, as if he had been aware of her presence long before she crossed the threshold. "You came," he said. Eliza closed the door behind her. "I didn't know where else to go." Something in his expression changed, not surprise, not concern. Recognition. "Tell me," he said, and she did. Not all at once, not perfectly, but honestly. She told him about the engagement, about Sir Reginald Crowe, about the letter, and finally about her mother. The words felt heavier as they left her, like something long buried finally breaking the surface. Adrian didn't interrupt. Not once. When she finished, the silence that followed was different from all the others they had shared. This one carried weight, calculation. "He's using leverage," Adrian said at last. "Yes, and he believes you will submit." Eliza held his gaze. "He's always been right before." Adrian stood then, moving slowly toward the window. His hands rested behind his back, his posture controlled. But there was something restrained beneath it. "How long?" he asked. 2 weeks. He nodded once. "And the arrangement with Crowe?" "A financial settlement. For Victor. For my mother." Adrian's jaw tightened slightly. Of course. Eliza took a step forward. Can you stop it? The question came out quieter than she intended. Not desperate, but close. Adrian turned back to her. For a moment it looked as though he might say yes without hesitation, but he didn't. Not immediately, he said. The honesty struck harder than any reassurance would have. Eliza nodded slowly. There, I thought so. I can investigate him, Adrian continued. Your stepfather, his finances, his dealings. Men like him rarely operate cleanly. But that takes time. Yes. Eliza looked down, her fingers tightening slightly against the fabric of her sleeve. Then it won't be enough. Adrian stepped closer. It may be. She shook her head. Not before the engagement is finalized. Silence settled again. Then Adrian said, there are other options. Eliza looked up. His voice was calm, careful. I could intervene directly. She understood immediately what he meant. Society, influence, power, and the cost of it. No, she said. The answer came faster than he expected. Adrian studied her. You would refuse help? I would refuse control, Eliza replied. That stopped him. If you step in like that, she continued, where it becomes another arrangement, another decision made over my head. Adrian's gaze didn't leave hers. And you would rather face this alone? Eliza hesitated, not because she didn't know the answer, but because saying it made it real. I would rather choose what happens to me, she said. Something shifted in his expression then. Not disagreement, not approval, something deeper. Respect. Then we proceed differently, he said. Eliza exhaled quietly. How? Adrian's voice lowered slightly. Leverage can be broken in two ways. You remove it, or you make it useless. Eliza frowned. What does that mean? It means, he said, if the truth he holds over you no longer has power, then he has nothing. Her breath stilled. My mother, she said slowly. Yes. If people know, they cannot be threatened with it, Adrian finished. The idea settled between them. Terrifying, irreversible. You're asking me to destroy my own reputation, Eliza said. I'm asking you to take control of it, Adrian replied. She turned away, her thoughts racing. All her life she had been told what mattered. Reputation, perception, silence. And now he was asking her to set all of that aside. Once it's done, she said quietly, there's no undoing it. No, Adrian agreed. Eliza closed her eyes briefly, then opened them again. And if it fails? Adrian didn't hesitate. Then I will make sure you are not left to face the consequences alone. She looked at him. Not at the title, not at the reputation, at the man who had never once spoken to her as though she were something to be managed, only something to be understood. Eliza straightened slightly. When do we begin? A faint shift in Adrian's expression, almost approval. We don't, he said. You do. The rumors began 3 days later. At first they were quiet, controlled. A conversation here, a mention there. Lady Varen was the first to carry it beyond whispers. She told me herself, she said over tea, her voice laced with just enough gravity to command attention. Not with shame, but with honesty. That was the key. Not scandal. Story. By the end of the week, everyone knew Eliza Rowen's mother had been imprisoned. But the way it was told changed everything. Not a fall from grace, a fight for survival, a woman abandoned, forced into impossible circumstances, enduring what most could not, and a daughter who refused to hide it. Victor heard the rumors the same day they reached the clubs. Eliza knew the moment he found out. The house felt different, tense, charged. He didn't call for her immediately. That was worse. When he finally entered the room, the door didn't slam. It closed, quietly. Eliza, he said. She stood slowly. Yes. Victor's expression was controlled, but his eyes burned. What have you done? Eliza met his gaze. I told the truth. The silence that followed was sharper than any shout. You had no right, Victor said, each word measured. I had every right, she replied. Victor stepped closer. Do you have any idea what you've cost us? Eliza didn't move. No. What have I cost you? The question landed. Victor's control cracked. Just slightly. You've destroyed your value, he snapped. Eliza's voice didn't rise. Then there's nothing left for you to sell. That did it. For the first time, Victor had no answer. And in that silence, something shifted. The balance of power. Finally beginning to break. Victor recovered quickly, but not completely. That was how Eliza knew she had struck something real. You think this changes anything? He said, his voice low. Yes, Eliza replied. It changes nothing, he snapped. The engagement still stands. Crow will not withdraw over gossip. It isn't gossip, she said. It's truth. Victor stepped closer. Truth does not matter. Perception does. Eliza held his gaze. Then your perception just lost its leverage. For a moment, something dangerous flickered across his face. You've made a mistake, he said quietly. Have I? Victor smiled, but there was no warmth in it. You've only ensured that when you marry, you will do so with no dignity left to bargain with. Eliza's chest tightened, but she didn't let it show. Then I suppose I have nothing left to lose. That answer unsettled him again. Victor turned away abruptly. Prepare yourself. Sir Reginald arrives tomorrow. Eliza's pulse faltered, but only for a second. Then I'll speak with him. Victor paused. Slowly he looked back at her. You will not embarrass me. Eliza met his gaze, steady now. That depends on you. Victor said nothing more. He left, and this time, he did not look certain. The next evening arrived too quickly. The house was quieter than usual, as though even the walls understood something was about to break. Eliza stood in the drawing room, her hands loosely clasped, her posture calm, but her thoughts sharp, focused. She was done reacting. Now she would act. Sir Reginald Crowe entered with the confidence of a man who had never once been refused. He was older, far older than her. His presence filled the room not with authority, but with expectation. Ah, Miss Rowen, he said, inclining his head slightly. Sir Reginald. Victor stood nearby, watching carefully. I trust you've been informed of our arrangement, Crowe continued. I have, Eliza said, and you understand the advantages it offers. Eliza tilted her head slightly. To whom? A flicker of irritation crossed his face. To all parties involved, he said. Eliza took a slow step forward. Then perhaps you can clarify something for me. Crowe's gaze sharpened. Go on. What is it you believe you're gaining? Victor shifted. Eliza? She didn't look at him. Crowe studied her for a moment. A wife, he said simply. Eliza nodded. And nothing else? Crowe's expression hardened slightly. Security, stability, a respectable union. Eliza's voice remained calm. You're aware of my family's history. Victor stiffened. Crowe didn't hesitate. I am. And it doesn't concern you? No, he said. It makes you manageable. The word hung in the air. Victor exhaled slowly, as if relieved Crowe had said it plainly. Eliza absorbed it without flinching. I see, she said. Crowe took a step closer. You would be well provided for. Your mother as well. I believe that is a consideration that matters to you. Eliza met his gaze. And in return? Crowe smiled faintly. You fulfill your role. Silence settled. Then Eliza said, No. Victor's head snapped toward her. What? Crowe didn't move. I beg your pardon? Eliza's voice did not rise. I said no. Victor stepped forward sharply. You will not. Eliza turned to him. You said I had no value left. You were right. Victor froze. She looked back at Crowe. Oin, so there is nothing here for you to buy. Crowe's expression darkened. You misunderstand your position. No, Eliza said. I understand it perfectly. Victor's voice dropped, dangerous. You are making a very serious error. Eliza faced him fully now. Then stop me. The room went still, because for the first time, he couldn't. Crowe's patience snapped first. This is absurd, he said coldly. I will not be spoken to this way. Eliza inclined her head slightly. Then you are free to leave. Victor stepped between them. Sir Reginald, please. This is a misunderstanding. No, Crowe said sharply. This is a miscalculation. His gaze flicked to Eliza, colder now. You will regret this. Eliza didn't respond. Crow turned and walked out without another word. The door closed, meaning the silence that followed was heavier than anything that had come before. Victor turned slowly toward her. You've destroyed everything, he said. Eliza shook her head. No, I've ended it. Victor's control shattered. Do you have any idea what you've done? Yes, she said. His voice rose. You've humiliated me. You've cost me a fortune. And you tried to sell me, she cut in. The words landed harder than anything else. Victor stepped forward, his expression dark. You think this is over? Eliza didn't move. It is for me. Victor let out a short, sharp laugh. You're still in my house, still under my name. Do you really believe you've escaped anything? Eliza held his gaze. No, she said quietly, but I've started. Victor stared at her, really stared this time. And for the first time, there was something new in his expression. Not anger, not control, uncertainty. He turned away abruptly. Get out of my sight. Eliza didn't argue. She walked past him, steady, composed. But inside, everything was still moving, still shifting, because this wasn't the end. Not yet. That night she didn't sleep, not from fear, but from awareness. Everything had changed, but nothing had been resolved. By morning, the consequences had already begun. The invitation stopped. The whispers returned. Different this time. Sharper. Not cruel exactly, but watchful. Society didn't know what to do with her anymore, and that made her dangerous. 3 days later, Adrian returned. He didn't send word. He didn't wait. He walked into the house like a man who had already decided something. Eliza met him in the sitting room. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Adrian said, "But you did it." Eliza nodded once. "I did." His gaze moved over her, not assessing, not questioning, confirming. "And?" he asked. Eliza exhaled slowly. "He's lost control, but not power." Adrian nodded slightly. "That was never going to be immediate." She held his gaze. Crow withdrew. A faint shift. Approval, perhaps. "Good." Eliza hesitated. "Victor hasn't." Adrian's expression hardened just slightly. "No, he won't." Silence lingered. Then Eliza asked, "What did you find?" Adrian stepped closer, his voice lowering. "Enough." Her pulse tightened. "Enough for what?" Adrian met her gaze directly. "To end this." Eliza didn't speak immediately. She searched his face, trying to measure what enough truly meant. "Be clear," she said at last. Adrian didn't hesitate. "Your stepfather has been diverting funds through false accounts, investments that don't exist, debts that were never paid, only moved." Eliza's brow tightened. "That's illegal." "Yes. Can it be proven?" Adrian's gaze held steady. "It already has been." Something in her chest shifted. Not relief. Not yet. Something sharper. "Then why is he still here?" "Because exposure is not the same as consequence," Adrian replied. "Timing matters." Eliza absorbed that. "And when is the right time?" Adrian's voice lowered slightly. "When it does the most damage." Silence settled between them. Eliza turned away, her thoughts moving quickly now. "When he'll try something else." "Yes. He won't stop." "No." She exhaled slowly. "Then we don't wait." Adrian watched her carefully. "You want to force it?" "Yes. That carries risk." Eliza turned back to him. "So does doing nothing." A brief pause. Then, Adrian nodded. "Then we choose the stage." The opportunity came sooner than expected. An invitation arrived that afternoon. Lady Ashbourne's spring ball, large, public, influential, exactly the kind of place Victor thrived in, and exactly the kind of place he would expect to regain control. Eliza held the invitation in her hands, her expression unreadable. "He'll be there," she said. Adrian stood across from her. "Of course he will." She looked up. "And everyone else?" "Yes." Eliza's grip tightened slightly on the card. "Then that's where it ends." Adrian studied her. And once this begins, you won't be able to contain it." "I'm not trying to," she said. A flicker of something passed through his expression. Approval again, but deeper this time. Then we prepare, he said. The night of the ball arrived with a kind of quiet tension that seemed to settle into everything. Eliza stood before the mirror, her reflection steady, composed, not invisible, not uncertain, different. She adjusted her gloves slowly, her movements precise. This wasn't about appearance. It was about control. Downstairs, Victor was already waiting. He looked at her once as she entered, and for the first time, he hesitated. "You're attending," he said. It wasn't a question. "Yes." Victor's eyes narrowed slightly. "After everything?" Eliza met his gaze. "Especially after everything." A long pause. Then Victor smiled faintly. "Good," he said. "Then perhaps we can begin repairing the damage you've caused." Eliza said nothing, because they both knew that wasn't what was about to happen. The ballroom was already alive when they arrived. Music, light, movement, and beneath it all, attention. It shifted almost immediately. Eliza felt it the moment she stepped inside. The whispers didn't stop. They changed direction, toward her. Victor moved beside her, controlled as ever, greeting people as though nothing had changed. But Eliza could feel it. The tension in his posture, the awareness. He was watching, waiting. So was she. Adrian arrived later, not announced loudly, not dramatically, but noticed, always noticed. His gaze found Eliza almost instantly, and in that brief moment, everything aligned, no words, just understanding. The shift came quickly, too quickly for Victor to stop it. A murmur spread through the room, then another, then stillness. Eliza turned slightly and saw him. Sir Reginald Crowe had returned, but he wasn't alone. Two men stood with him, formal, composed, unmistakable. Officials. Victor saw them a second later. Eliza watched the exact moment it happened. The flicker, the realization, the loss of control. He recovered fast. He always did, but not fast enough. Crowe stepped forward, his voice cutting through the room. "Mr. Hale," he said. Victor forced a smile. "Sir Reginald, I wasn't expecting—" "No," Crowe interrupted. "I imagine you weren't." The room had gone quiet now. Completely. Crowe gestured slightly. The two men stepped forward. "I believe there are matters that require your attention." Victor's expression hardened. "This is neither the time nor the place." "One could argue," Crowe said calmly, "that it is precisely both." The tension snapped tight. Victor's gaze flicked briefly toward Eliza, and in that look, blame, rage, understanding. "You," he said quietly. Eliza didn't move. "Careful," she replied. "That was all." But it was enough. Adrian stepped forward then, not quickly, not aggressively, but decisively. "Mr. Hale," he said. Victor turned, his control slipping now. "You? This is your doing." Adrian didn't deny it. "I simply ensured that facts were placed in the correct hands," he said. Victor laughed sharply. "You think this will ruin me?" Adrian's voice remained calm. "No, your actions did that." The officials stepped closer. "Mr. Hale," one of them said, "we require you to come with us." Victor didn't move. For a moment it looked as though he might resist. But then he straightened, smoothed his coat, and smiled. "Of course," he said. But as he turned, his gaze found Eliza again. And this time, there was no control left in it, only fury. "You think you've won," he said quietly. Eliza met his gaze. "No," she replied. "I think I've finished." Victor said nothing more. He left. And the moment the doors closed behind him, the room exhaled. The noise returned slowly. Whispers, movement, shock. But it no longer touched her the same way. Eliza stood still, her hands steady at her sides. Not because nothing had happened, but because everything had. Adrian stepped beside her. "It's done," he said quietly. Eliza looked at him. For a moment she didn't answer. Then, "Yes," she said. Not relief, not triumph. Something quieter, stronger, freedom. Later, when the crowd had thinned and the night had softened, they stood outside beneath the open sky. No noise, no pressure, just stillness. Adrian looked at her. I meant what I said, he began. Eliza met his gaze. I know. A pause, then he said it anyway. I love you. Not the idea of you. Not what you could be. You. The words settled between them, clear, unguarded. Eliza didn't look away. For once, she didn't hesitate. I know, she said softly. And then, I love you too. No uncertainty, no fear, just truth. Months later, the bridge stood complete. Clean lines, strong structure, no excess. Eliza ran her fingers lightly along the stone, and her gaze steady as it stretched across the water. Adrian stood beside her. It will hold, he said. Eliza nodded. It was designed to. A small pause, then she added, no ornament, just function and faith. Adrian glanced at her. Like you, he said. Eliza allowed the faintest hint of a smile. Not because she needed the words, but because, for the first time, they matched what she already knew. She wasn't invisible. She never had been. She had simply been waiting. To be seen. If you stayed all the way to the end, you already know. This wasn't just a story about love. It was about choosing yourself when no one else will. If that meant something to you, go ahead and like the video. Subscribe for more stories like this, and tell me in the comments what moment hits you the hardest.